It is pure luck that my first entry in the PlayStation catalog happens to be one of its major mascots, Miss Lara Croft in her very first video game outing, Tomb Raider 1996. I was disappointed that the disc for Twisted Metal was missing, but it just so happened this was the next chronological entry, and so worked out perfectly. Tomb Raider was released first on Sega's Saturn console in Europe on October 25, 1996, and then on PlayStation in North America on November 14, 1996. Developed by Core Design and published by Eidos, both United Kingdom companies, the game was a hit. So much so that Sony worked out a deal to gain exclusive rights for the next two entries, and solidified Tomb Raider as a PlayStation series for the series' early lifetime. Core Design continued to develop for the series up until 2003, though it lost creative director Toby Gard before the second game released. After the launch of Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness in 2003, Eidos turned over the Tomb Raider franchise to Crystal Dynamics due to the poor performance of Core's recent releases. The decision led to a large portion of Core's staff leaving and forming Circle Studio, which only developed one game, called Without Warning, which was also panned and led to their shift to DVD games and eventual shutdown in 2007. Core Design was folded into Rebellion in 2006 and worked on Shell Shock 2 and Rogue Warrior before being closed in 2010. Development for Tomb Raider began in 1993 and had an 18-month development cycle. The studio was made up of 6 people, with creative director Toby Gard being credited for a large portion of the design of Lara Croft and the game as a whole. Originally a male lead, product development director Adrian Smith reasoned that, quote, "We wanted the character to be coy and stealthy and agile. It just fitted more with a woman," unquote. Speaking to Face magazine, a United Kingdom music, fashion, culture magazine, which ran from 1980 to 2004, Toby Gard discussed the process of developing Croft as a character. Quote, "For a long time, she was called Laura Cruz, but, knowing that Tomb Raider had to appeal in the US as well, Laura became Lara, and as the name became more American, the character became more British." Adrian says, "Americans love upper-class English accents, so her surname changed to Croft, to fit in with her background. After all, only someone with a lot of money behind them could afford to take weeks off work to waltz around being archaeologically resourceful in teeny hot pants." The composer, Nathan McCree, cited he wanted the source to sound, quote, "like English classical music, so I guess my influences came from English classical music that my dad used to play to me when I was smaller. I spent a lot of time singing in a choir from the age of 6, so a lot of the harmonies and progressions would have come from choral music too," unquote. He also stated that he was given very little to go on in terms of what made up the level he was writing for. Quote, "Every tune was written once, and that version went into the game. I wrote the entire score for Tomb Raider 1 in 4 weeks. And no, I didn't really see the levels in an early state. If I was lucky, I got to see the area where we needed some music, or some screenshot or something. But most of the time, I was working for minimal word descriptions like underwater, T-Rex, caves, etc." Unquote. Now enough about development, let's discuss the actual game. Tomb Raider is one of those games that touted the cinematic approach to a narrative, with an introductory cutscene that very quickly set up the premise. Lara Croft is an adventurer, but one who does it more for the thrill than for the money, as revealed by her refusal to be purchased and instead, quote-unquote, plays for sport. She's introduced as having uncovered the truth behind Bigfoot, and we don't really see her whole face, only those sunglasses and eyes. After this, we get to the main menu, which, as in most older games, will load up a demo mode, videos of pre-recorded gameplay when the player idles for too long. Once the player does start a new game, we get another cutscene, this time of Laura and a guide, finding the large entrance walls to the tomb mentioned in the introduction. Laura makes her field debut here, dual pistols in hand, gunning down vicious wolves after falling from the top of the entrance. Players take control inside, with the wolves' footprints giving a visible guide of where to go next. Running forward is up on the D-pad, with left and right controlling our direction. Down causes Laura to hop backwards, and holding L1 in tandem with the D-pad controls Laura's view, which is restricted by how far her head can turn. Square is for jumps, whether forward or straight up, and cross helps us climb up ledges. Laura can also shimmy for more precise jumps and drops. The player also gets their first taste of danger with the classic walls that shoot darts as you pass trap. Further in, we realize there will be no tutorial for this game, and instead the gameplay itself will teach the player how to master its systems. We first get the small ledges to climb up, followed by a brief bit of combat with the bat, and drop down a level. And lastly, open a lever to progress through a door. Each of these introductory elements will be expanded upon in more complicated ways as you progress further into the game. One of the first large areas we encounter is a long open space with 2 bridges. Fall into the pit below and you'll be forced to kill 2 wolves, with the dodge roll coming into play for avoiding damage. This teaches you not to fall down into lower spaces, as most of the time they contain enemies and by extension death. The first bridge you cross is safe, but immediately followed by one you must jump across. To help bookmark your accomplishment, a save crystal is located on the other side, allowing you to mark your progress thus far. Items you interact with in this world, whether they be an item drop, save crystal, or door level, all require you to stand in a very specific spot in order to activate, which can be frustrating as you make minor adjustments just to pick up a health pack in front of you. Continue onwards for another wolf battle, which is this time introduced via the musical score, which rarely plays in the game, and even then it is mostly as a cue for enemy presence. The next platforming section teaches you to be quick about progressing through a door once its lever is pulled, as the player must climb up to the lever, climb down, and then up again on the door's platform. If you wander, or fail to reach it in time, you'll have to backtrack again to the lever and repeat the process. The dart walls appear again, followed by the musical cue preceding a lone wolf attack. This section is where the game introduces unstable platforms, marked by cracks in them, which at first simply cause you to fall into a lower area, which is actually necessary to move forward, but later on, these crumbling platforms will either cause death or major setbacks. Now once the caves are complete, you will move onwards to a more complex tomb structure which requires a key to get past. This is also where we first see the animation for pushing a block forward, which is still quite impressive for the amount of effort put in to move it. A major section eventually appears in which you come upon a 3-doored building, with only one avenue open to you at present. You must make your way through a gameplay loop that requires swimming for the first time, and making diagonal jumps in order to ascend to unlock the next door. Thankfully, the introduction of water means if you fail or overshoot a platform, you won't immediately die but just have to get up and try again. Once the major doorway is opened up, we get an evolution of the dart-spewing walls, swinging axes. We also get our first fake-out, with a lever opening up a trapdoor beneath you, plunging you into the water below. A second fake-out soon follows, as the first emergent point is a platform occupied by a deadly bear, much larger and tougher than the wolves and bats of previous combat experiences. When you realize a pathway exists in that still water pool you emerge from, you can make your way to the second level, and open the gated door. However, a second door lies behind it, which requires a key that you previously collected. Now this also forces you to kill the bear in order to free up the threat of death during the use of the key. Now, with that part finished, you come across moving water for the first time, a river that pushes you back from the natural progression laid out before you. Now, if you're successful and reach the end, you'll come across a set of gears that are missing 3 pieces. Now, you'll actually have to follow the river down to a separate section entirely, which leads to the locations for the missing gears. It is also in this more heavily forested section that you stumble upon dinosaurs. That's right, raptors occupy this space, as does a very large and imposing Tyrannosaurus Rex, whose steps shake the earth around you. Despite its enormous size, the T-Rex can be defeated thanks to the unlimited supply of bullets that Laura's dual pistols consume. Now the major section here has many back tunnels for you to utilize, if fighting a huge dinosaur isn't interesting enough for you. The various back entrances culminate in a big gap that has to be jumped for Laura to grab onto a broken bridge opposite her starting point, and to acquire the final gear piece. However, it is here that my playthrough ended, as I had reached an hour of playtime, buffered by my sometimes frequent deaths. This was the furthest I had ever reached in Tomb Raider, as I held little affinity for it as part of my gaming history, and I wasn't exactly the best at games when I was younger. I'm still surprised at how well it holds up, although I am thankful for the improved analog controls that came with the evolution of 3D worlds. Lara Croft still appears to be a fine action-adventure game, and a great way to begin revisiting my small video game library. Check in next time for Star Wars Rebel Assault 2: The Hidden Empire on the PlayStation 1. And as always, thanks for watching.